Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gatsu. So today I'm going to give you a real quick rundown on Affliction Warlock and what you should be doing with it if you decide to play it here in Battle for Azeroth during patch 8.0. Now, Affliction is, of course, the the boogeyman, so to speak. There's a bunch of people that don't want to play it because, it's what they were stuck playing during in Taurus and 7.35. But the thing to keep in mind is that Affliction is very strong right now, mainly because what Affliction makes up for, what it really does, honestly, for me at least, is it makes up for the lack of stats that I have, and if you get pigeonholed like I did with gear, I'm sitting at about 341 item level right now, and you'll see I have 56% mastery. That is a ton of mastery. Most of my gear does have mastery on it, so I have decided that I'm going to play Affliction for a little bit until I get myself a decent amount of haste, so that I can make either Destruction or even Demonology significantly better, for me at least. The damage differences when you look at sims in that, like, one, they're not entirely accurate, and two, that it's early days, so, a lot of it comes down to how well you can play it. As far as, what I've been doing with Affliction, I've been having very good success with it. I think I'm pretty well optimally geared as far as Azerite traits go, and my trinkets are pretty solid too. So let's go ahead and talk about the talent build real quick. So for talents, there's only a couple of choices you can really make as far as what you're going to be running. I'm trying to get used to the idea that whenever I walk into a dungeon that I should not be changing talents much at all, because when we hit Mythic Plus, that won't be an option. So the pretty much default build that I have been running since I started playing Affliction, at least. In the row 15 here, you have your option of either Nightfall, Drain Soul, or Deathbolt. According to current sims, and pretty much every experience that I've had, as well as many other people's experiences, both Nightfall and Drain Soul are just not worth it. Right now, Deathbolt is just head and shoulders above it, so keep in mind that Deathbolt is probably going to be your default, and that's not a bad thing. Deathbolt gives you a good bit of burst, and is very, very powerful whenever you pair that with your main cooldown, which we'll talk about shortly. As far as our 30 row goes, you basically have an option between Absolute Corruption, if you're going to be doing dungeons and things, or Siphon Life if you're there purely for the single target, or you really need the self-healing for some reason. Absolute Corruption is just absolutely just hands down better in every AoE situation in dungeons. It's one dot that you get to put up and then don't have to worry about refreshing. It's consistent damage, and it does more damage because you picked Absolute Corruption. I very much feel that this is definitely a design problem, but this is going to come back to haunt the design team eventually. 45 row here, I've chosen Demon Skin just because of the extra health that you essentially get out of it, the effective health you get from your damage. This will keep you alive in a lot of situations where we don't have that Drain Soul, basically a near invulnerability that we had during Legion, so Demon Skin is a must. If you really want Burning Rush, you can take it, but in all seriousness, we're very mobile as Affliction. There's very little we have to stop and cast for, and the things we do have to cast are very short cast times. So unless you are, absolutely running like a bat out of hell all the time, you probably won't need Burning Rush. Dark Pact is definitely a pick if you're going to have any situation where you absolutely need that extra cooldown to survive things, or if there's like a major soak. I haven't run into that yet with the regular mythics I've been running. Maybe on some tyrannical weeks, things like that, but for now I'm just going to take Demon Skin because, one, it's passive, and two, it's very difficult to eat through that shield. I can actually eat some mechanics with it right now, which is kind of hilarious. In the level 60 row here, unless you absolutely need this snare for some reason in Vile Taint, Phantom Singularity is going to be your go-to. This is both self-healing as well as a good bit of damage. It's an absurd amount of AoE damage, too, and its single target is just better than Vile Taint, or obviously Sow the Seeds, because Sow the Seeds is an AoE talent. Seed of Corruption in general is really weak right now, so Phantom Singularity just pulls way ahead. The next row here, we have your choice of either Dark Fury, Mortal Coil, or Demonic Circle. This row is completely up to you what you want to grab. I'm taking Dark Fury because right now I'm the only person with a stun most of the time. In my groups, Mortal Coil is absolutely great for self-healing if you need it, and of course Demonic Circle anytime there's going to be some sort of a, quick transition that you need to make, or if you have to get somewhere specific, like on the last boss of Atal Tazar. Demonic Circle can be great just for, helping you out with movement. For the most part, though, I've just found that having that quicker cooldown on Shadow Fury has been more beneficial to the groups I'm in. This row here, level 90, Shadow Embrace, Haunt, or Grimoire of Sacrifice. At the moment, Shadow Embrace is just not worth it. If I was going to take Shadow Embrace, I'd probably also be taking Drain Soul, just because of how well they pair. That's not what I'm doing, of course, because Drain Soul is just not worth it at the moment. And having a maintenance debuff is not great when you're AoEing anyway. Haunt, on the other hand, is an extra 10% damage from all your dots. Just in general. I mean, it's not even just your dots. It's all damage you deal to the target is increased by 10%. That's crazy. So, you know, Haunt being a pretty much constant uptime just sets it head and shoulders above the rest. Haunt paired with Deathbolt is incredible. Whenever you have a full stack of dots and you pop your cooldown, it's just nutty. Grimoire of Sacrifice would be good if it scaled a little better. Grimoire of Sacrifice is really, really close, but right now pet damage and Haunt will outdamage Grimoire of Sacrifice. So even though, you know, you would have the convenience of perhaps not having to, you know, tell your Voidwalker to taunt when your tank dies, or, well, never mind, doesn't actually do anything. We'll go with the Fel Puppy. You know, you don't have to tell your Fel Puppy to interrupt it. You interrupt it yourself. You know, however, the damage your Fel Pup's gonna do is gonna be more with Haunt anyway. So Haunt just ends up pulling ahead there. Grimoire Sac may get better later, depending on if they give us an Azerite trait that, you know, in some way adds shadow damage or something. Level 100 row here. Choice of Soul Conduit, Creeping Death, or Dark Soul Misery. For raiding in that, Dark Soul Misery is the go-to. It just works out better in raids from what I'm reading and from what the numbers are telling us. Creeping Death, though, is definitely what you're going to want to take, of course, for dungeons. Creeping Death is great. This doesn't give you haste, but it makes all your dots tick faster. Now, the reason I say it's not haste is because, of course, this does not affect your Shadow Bolt. It doesn't affect your cast time on Haunt or Seed of Corruption or anything like that. So, you know, it's not haste, but it does make your dots tick faster. Which is definitely a good thing. It speeds it up a little bit. So Creeping Death is pretty much the go-to pick right now. Dark Soul Misery apparently is actually just slightly above Creeping Death in a raid situation, but Dark Soul Misery, of course, gives you essentially another heroism every 2 minutes, which if you need that targeted burst, so to speak, then Dark Soul Misery is definitely the choice, again, in a raid. Now, as far as Azerite traits go, I'm in a bit of a special situation here because I am an engineer. I have these wonderful goggles. For AoE in that, which of course is what I'm focusing on since I am running Mythic Plus. Synaptic Spark Capacitor is your spells and abilities have a chance to cause the target to become a spark coil for 10 seconds. Enemies within 8 yards of the spark coil take 1100 damage every 2 seconds and deal 5% reduced damage to you. Now that second part, of course, isn't all that important. What's important there is the spark coil. That's free AoE damage, and that can proc off of every single dot tick and be applied to the target, every Shadow Bolt, all of that. So it's very possible to have the Spark Capacitors up on multiple targets at a time. That's a ton of AoE damage. Now the second ability that's on here is Heed My Call. Damaging abilities have a chance to deal a substantially larger amount of nature damage to the target, and then nature damage to enemies within 3 yards of the target. So my goggles are basically just a big AoE component of my damage. It's actually a lot more than I thought it would be, but I'm okay with that because, of course, these will get outscaled once we get good raid gear. So that's where I'm at with that. My Heart of Azeroth is up to 342. I'm at, I believe, rank 17. Hoping to get to 18 today here later on. My shoulders here, I have Racking Brilliance. Every other soul shard your Agony generates also increases your intellect by 456 for 6 seconds. If you have multiple agonies out, this will be up constantly for you, and an extra 500 or, well, an extra 450 intellect is very strong. That's a huge, huge proc. So if you can find Racking Brilliance, which there is a tool on Wowhead to help you find specific traits, as well as a best in slot list on Wowhead for all the specs. If you, for some reason, can't find the information you're looking for there, or it's not presented in a way you like, there is Lock One Stop Shop, which should be able to help you out as well. That website's great, so definitely check them out. Third one here I have is Unstable Catalyst. This gives you a chance to get basically a Rune of Power from Mage, except it's for you. It gives you an extra 257 primary stat for 8 seconds. Again, 257 intellect is quite a bit. That's a good boost. That stacking with everything else is just a ton of extra damage. So These are the Azeroth traits that I decided to pick here. I have not been able to find a way to stack multiple of any of these, because the Racking Brilliance is difficult to get a hold of, and Unstable Catalyst, as far as I can tell, is only from a very select few places. Now, as far as trinkets go, you basically just want whatever is at the top of the list on Blood Mallet. I'll link that in the description as well. It's a good trinket resource. But you want to be going for whatever trinkets are up there, and basically just your highest item level trinkets are probably going to be your best. Yeah, since we're playing Affliction here, Balefire Branch is very strong. It's a mastery trinket with an on-use to get you 1200 intellect, which decays over 20 seconds or whenever you take damage. Super, super strong, and then there was a world quest up that had this ticking clock, which went Warforged and gave me a socket, which is great. This has a chance to give you either haste or mastery, which is a very good stat for Affliction. In general, your enchants, you're looking for haste or mastery, depending on what you have available to you or what your stat needs are. I'm pretty high on mastery, so I opted to go for haste. Still need a haste enchant on this because I just got this. And then your weapon enchant, once you have a weapon worth enchanting, you're going to want to grab Quick Navigation. It is the haste stat stacking weapon enchant. Super good, super good. Ideally, you want to get the Seabreeze Staff from Shrine of the Storm that has a stacking haste buff, and then you put Quick Navigation on there, and you basically get a heroism every time it all procs together, which is crazy and awesome. Now, as far as basic rotation goes, I'm going to show you here just a real simple basic opener. Whenever you go and you have your DBM pull timer come up, you know, in a raid or that, or, you know, we're going to assume you're in a mythic dungeon and you're going for a boss. So assuming we have a single target boss here, you're going to always lead off with Haunt. After Haunt, throw up your Corruption, pop up your Agony, toss out at least 3 unstable afflictions, then your Phantom Singularity, pop your Dark Glare, make sure you have your Trinket proc on Dark Bolt, or Death Bolt there. Now that Death Bolt, of course, is going to give you a pretty sizable amount of damage. Death Bolt there did, I believe, it was like 30, it was about 30,000. When that crits, it gets pretty crazy. So, you know, it's something you definitely want to, you know, pay attention to. You can get some really big numbers. With that, it gives you a good bit of burst. But basically, all you need to do as Affliction to make sure you're doing the most damage is to, 1, maintain your dots. After that burst phase there with Death Bolt, you want to make sure you're only really putting up 1 unstable affliction at a time. You don't need to go too crazy with it because shard generation is actually fairly low, so you're not going to have the option to stack multiple UAs. If you have that cascading contagion, I think the Azeroth trait is, then obviously that changes your playstyle a bit, and you're going to want to stack unstable afflictions one after the other and make sure you maintain that haste buff when possible, but it's going to be pretty difficult to do so. And the most important thing here, of course, is to make sure you have a way to track your Agony. Make sure you refresh your Agony, keep it at 10 stacks the whole encounter. Once you really get into the groove of it, it's not too bad to maintain. Your top priority is to keep that at cap while also keeping Haunt up. Haunt, of course, has a very static timer unless something dies, like on Trash. And whenever those things die, it resets Haunt. So as soon as it comes off, pop it right back up there. Get a couple Shadow Bolts in his filler. Maintain your dots. Pretty simple stuff. In general, Affliction is that spec that's just kind of, you know, grind down the enemies. You know, you're not going to be that guy that's bursting up to the top of the meter immediately. If that happens, you're either getting really lucky with procs and getting a ton of soul shards, so you have to throw unstable afflictions out there, you know, or something like that. You know, which, good for you, but that's not the typical. So, you know, be sure you're maintaining your Haunt, maintaining your Agony, and try to keep up an unstable affliction as often as possible. You know, it's okay if unstable affliction falls off, that is completely fine. Just toss it back up as soon as you can. And then, of course, refresh Haunt every chance you get. Refresh the Agony. And you'll do consistent damage that way. There's a lot of bosses where, as long as you maintain even just Corruption and Agony, you're going to do a ton of damage. And while you have Death Bolt talented, it's very important to note that with Deathbolt, you don't necessarily need to hold it for when you have a ton of dots up. You want to be using Deathbolt pretty much on cooldown, so whenever you see your Deathbolt is going to shortly come off cooldown, you want to make sure that you have a UA that can go up, you want to make sure Haunt will be active when you use it, and whenever you have the opportunity to cast Deathbolt during Dark Glare, you want to make sure you use as many UAs as you can before you Dark Glare. So the only time I would ever delay Deathbolt is right before you're about to summon a Dark Glare, so you can get the most out of both of them. Because you're going to have, of course, multiple dots up anyway for Dark Glare, because that increases his damage, and it should just help you out immensely. Now, as far as pet selection goes, there isn't really anything specific for Affliction that will make or break you. The biggest thing with Affliction as far as the pet is, what does your group need? If you have, a tank that is reliably interrupting and you have, say, 2 melee DPS, that's 3 interrupts. If you don't think you're going to need that interrupt, surprisingly, you actually want to run your Voidwalker most of the time. Now, Voidwalker does have a couple of issues with him, notably, which I'm going to pull him up real quick here. So, of course, thing number one with the Voidwalker, if you're going to run him as a pet during DPS, you want to make sure that Threatening Presence is toggled off. Now, if you see this autocast on Threatening Presence, you want to uncheck that autocast, and you want to turn it off. It should change here whenever I change the window. So you should see this purple symbol here, the kind of like, screaming soul. That means he does not have it active at the moment. And you want to make sure, of course, whenever you're in a dungeon, that you're not that hunter that, for whatever reason, decided he had to have his pet taunt on, because that's no. Don't want to do that. No, 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 no. Now, the reason Voidwalker does work as a DPS pet is Consuming Shadows. Consuming Shadows, you want to leave this on autocast. He will drain 398 health from all nearby enemies. One, that keeps him alive. Two, it actually does a significant amount of damage in an AoE pool. I've been very surprised to see him do as much as he does, and it's just very entertaining as well. The other thing, of course, you're going to want to make sure you turn off here is Suffering. You don't want your Voidwalker casting this at all. This will taunt the target, and you do not want that to, be on in a dungeon most of the time. So also turn off autocast on Suffering. The only thing you want to leave on autocast, of course, is this Consuming Shadows. It doesn't have a cooldown, so he can spam this, and he will. Shadow Bulwark is his health increase. Just leave this on autocast. If for some reason he takes aggro because your tank died, you want him to be able to go ahead and pop his last stand, which is a really, really good thing. But in general, he actually does quite a bit of damage. Now, the other pets also do keep up fairly well. On single target, I believe the Imp pulls ahead, just because he, of course, is ranged and he can cast and all that and never really miss a beat, whereas, a Voidwalker has to run, Fell Puppy has to run, Succubus has to run. So if you're going to be fighting a boss and there's no adds whatsoever, definitely go with the Imp. The Imp does give you an additional 5% stamina. Just you, though. It's no longer a group buff. Something that's very, very important to note, of course. But the Imp also can cleanse you if you need it. So, if you need that interrupt with the Fell Puppy, you can totally run him instead. You're not going to lose a bunch of damage or anything. In a situation where you don't need it, though, Voidwalker can definitely help out and make you look a little bit better on the trash pools. He's not like, it's not like, you're going to get Old Seed of Corruption back with him or anything, but he does do pretty well. So with that, guys, my general thoughts on Affliction at the moment are that it's in a very good place. It may not be the spec that I want to play, but at the very least, it is strong, it works, and it's very straightforward. It's, keeping up your dots, maintaining your debuffs, and you're absurdly mobile, which is very surprising. I'm still not used to how mobile I am, but of course, that's what I hated about Affliction back in Legion, how not mobile I was, and now I'm mobile again. So this is definitely a throwback if you enjoyed Burning Crusade type Affliction. It is very, very similar. So with that, guys, thank you so much for checking in today. If you liked the video, like it. If you didn't, dislike it. Toss me a sub if you haven't already so you can see whenever I post other videos and when I live stream. Added on to that, of course, I actually just upgraded the internet here. My roommates were awesome and upgraded it. So we went from having, I think it was 75 something, 75 down and something else to, we have a gigabit connection now. So things are much, much quicker and much less congested here, so I should be able to stream more regularly now with less issues, which is great. If you want to support us on Patreon, go right ahead and do that. There's a link in the description, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.